Hello, I'm Julia Fisher. Welcome to The Olive Tree, the programme that brings you the voices and the stories of Jewish and Arab believers in Jesus living in Israel and the Palestinian areas of the West Bank. Come with me to the city of Tiberias, situated on the shores of the Sea of Galilee, to hear from Claude Ezagouri. Today, he's the pastor of a Messianic congregation there, a long way from where he was born in Algeria. For the next 3 programmes, Claude is going to share his story with us, and today he starts by describing his early memories of moving from Algeria to France.
I come from a traditional Jewish background, born in Algeria. I lived in Algeria about 13 years, and when Algeria became independent, all of the French people from Algeria moved to France in 1962. There was quite a nice Jewish community in Algeria, and then in France I continued in Judaism. I met my wife, who was not Jewish at that time. We got married in 1972, and about 3 years after that she decided to convert to Judaism. And then in 1975 we made Aliyah. We came as immigrants to Israel. We came to a kibbutz not far from here, from Tiberias. And there in 1983 I met the Lord. My wife was very opposed to my faith. But in 1985 the Lord brought her to him, and we lived in the kibbutz until about 1989.
Let's just go back to the beginning, to Algeria. Was there a large Jewish community in Algeria?
Well, comparatively, yes. It was quite a lively Jewish community.
And whereabouts did you live in France?
In the south of France. Yeah, we lived in the south, in Montpellier. As I said, until we made Aliyah. Well, the last year we lived in Paris, but then we decided to come to Israel.
So really you were educated in France?
Yes, practically. Even in Algeria was a French colony, so our education was French. The language also was French.
Now, you were brought up in a religious family, weren't you?
Yes, not Orthodox, but religious, yes. Like most of the Jews there. You know, the thing is, in Judaism you have several trends, and there is also a traditional trend which adds a lot of things that you don't see in the Bible. A lot of traditions from Algeria. And so it's a little bit mixed, but as you may know, we were practically led by the rabbis, and the rabbis would tell us, what to do and what not to do, and this was our way of life,
So when you came to Israel and joined a kibbutz, was it a religious kibbutz?
No, it was a secular kibbutz, and at that time it was rather difficult for my wife, because she had come to Judaism. She had become even more Jewish than I was. Then, I and a group of other people in the kibbutz, we organized a small synagogue, and we prayed there. I prayed every morning also with my tefillin, my phylacteries, and in the kibbutz we had this small place where we would pray together, and we continued our tradition.
So how different would your life have been if you hadn't become a believer in Yeshua? What were your ideas at that time, your ambitions?
Well, at that time I was rather anti-Christian. That was the way I was educated, especially by my mother. I even went to the secretary of the kibbutz at the time to tell him that we shouldn't let any non-Jew come to become members in the kibbutz, and we should ask if they want to be members, to be converted to Judaism and so on. I was rather extremist.
So what happened to change your mind?
Well, at some point I felt that I didn't have in my life the spiritual experience that I was looking for. I wanted something more. I wanted to see the miracles that I heard in Jewish history, in the Bible. I wanted to see a change, a spiritual change in my life. And mainly, I remember that I had this idea in my head that I needed to know more of the truth. Now, I was not aware what the truth was. What truth was, at that time it was rather vague. But like many young Israelis, I went to look for what I call truth into other religious and spiritual avenues like Buddhism and Hinduism and transcendental meditation. As you may know, many Israeli Jews go to India and to the East to have their spiritual experience. And although I didn't go there, but I read a lot of books and I got interested, and I got more and more and deeper into these spiritual ways. And at some point, as I was into transcendental meditation, there was I remember I had a course, and we went through from training to training, and there was one exercise that I couldn't do. Thank God, because I already got to a stage that was could have been very dangerous, and at that point, I met Christian volunteers who gave me my first Bible. Of course, I argued with them, and I remember trying to convince them that reincarnation was a revelation that they didn't have, and so on, one day my wife saw a book that she thought was for me. She didn't even open it, and it was called The Art of Meditation. So she thought, oh, my husband likes meditation, so she bought this book. And when I started to read, it was written by a guru, but it was meditation on verses of the Bible, which was a surprise to me. I thought it was a new technique of meditation. And of course, when I came to the verses of the New Testament, it was a big impact to me. Especially the words of Jesus from the Gospel had a big impact on me, and I really felt I was attracted by Jesus. I felt something is going on in me, and I was a little bit alarmed, because I thought, what my mother always taught us, Jesus is not for the Jews, and so then although I left the book a little bit, trying to forget it, then I overheard a radio station coming from South Lebanon. I didn't know that it was a Christian station. It was the Voice of Hope, and there I heard a message by a Californian preacher speaking to the Jews. He was broadcasting to Israel, and he was explaining how Jesus was already prophesied in the Old Testament, especially in the book of Isaiah. And he said, if you want free tapes on the book of Isaiah, you can write me. So I wrote, and I got about 12 tapes. And at that time I was working in banana plantations, and I had my Walkman, and I listened to the tapes, and that's how I decisively made the decision to come to the Lord.
What about your wife, Michelle? Because she had just converted to Judaism. Now you had moved on.
Yes, well, that was my first thought, because I thought, okay, now I found the truth, but I'm the only one in Israel who believes in Jesus, I thought. And I said, what shall I do? Maybe write a book, or I don't know. And then I thought, well, I'm going to start with my wife. I'm going to start to tell her. And I went, and I told her, I shared my experience with her, and she got angry, and she said, you started with all kinds of Eastern religions, and now you could come to tell me that Jesus is the Messiah of the Jews. You're crazy. And for 2 years, we had a very difficult time. At the end of these 2 years, we decided, okay, we cannot stay together. We didn't have any common language. We decided to divorce. I was not even in a fellowship at that time, and as we were considering this decision, there was a Christian volunteer who was working with my wife, who came to our house and who said that she was a born-again believer. And when I heard that, I was in the other room. When I heard, I came to her and I said, you know, I'm not a Christian, I'm a Jew, but I believe in Jesus, and I'm the only one in Israel. She said, no, you're not the only one. I can bring you to other believers like you, Jewish believers, and you can meet them. And that's how I started to meet other believers. And at that point, I had a hard time to explaining to my wife that she should at least meet other believers, and she accepted to do that. To make a long story short, she met other believers, and they and she had her own experience with the Lord through them.
Claude Ezagouri, a Messianic Jewish pastor in northern Israel, sharing his story. And we'll hear more from Claude on next week's programme. You're listening to The Olive Tree with me, Julia Fisher. The Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund is a Christian charity based in the UK that supports the needs of both Jewish and Arab Christians living in the Holy Land, especially those involved in reconciliation. If you'd like to know more about our work and receive our free bi-monthly newsletter, please either visit our website, www.olivetreefund.org, or write to me, Julia Fisher, at the Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund, PO Box 850, Horsham, RH12, 9GA, that's in the UK. And if you'd like to hear this programme again or any edition of The Olive Tree, please just visit the website olivetreefund.org. Join me at the same time next week for another story from The Olive Tree. Until then, goodbye.